I'm going to show you how incredibly important it is to get professional photos. And in fact, not just professional photos for your short-term rental, but have a professional stager come in and prepare the house before the professional photographer comes in and shoots the property. All right. So I recently had a situation with a new client in my management business that was tired of managing his properties and just wanted my team to take over completely, which happens a lot. We do it all the time. In this particular instance, he did not want to spend a dime. He didn't want to pay any fees. He didn't want to pay for new photos. He says, I already have photos. Why am I going to pay for them again? He didn't want to make any improvements. He thought, if there's just a better operator in here, the property is going to do well. And true enough, it probably will do better. But if the property is not optimized, then it doesn't matter how good you are at operating it. There's some inherent issues with the property that have to be addressed before anyone can be successful with it. Now we've had several months of operating this portfolio of properties, and we have some very clear data to indicate, at a minimum, how incredibly important it is to at least get professional photography. So I'm going to show you a little bit of back and forth with my revenue manager, who is responsible for bringing in the online marketing, bring in as much revenue as possible through online marketing on sites like Airbnb, VRBO, etc. We had a back and forth conversation about these properties, trying to figure out how I could actually convince him to hey, we have some information now. Can we please make a situation where we're all making more money? And I'm going to go through this conversation in some data that we accrued during this time. We can show you how important these professional pictures are. All right, so here's 4 new listings that we took on, and they all have a similar tale when we track their search engine optimization on Airbnb in particular. All right, when we first launched the listing, it made it really close to page 1 right off the jump. So there's 25 listings per page. In this instance right here, it's on page 3. These different lines are different guest counts. So different demographics and how well your listing is performing in search rankings with different demographics. So it started pretty high. And then before the end of the month, it just plummeted when people searched for a home in an area and this property in particular was available. It met the requirements of the group size and location they wanted to live. And it showed up between number 300 and 200 for most group sizes. Okay. Here is another property. Started on page 1, quickly fell down to page 10 further. With all these properties, you see it actually creeps back up by August. And the way that we were able to pull off this upward trend back to the first page, which is where we always want to be, when someone searches for a property in an area and we have a property there that meets their criteria, we want to show up first thing with all of these properties. And the way we did it was by dropping prices, because there was no other asset we had that could improve page rankings and therefore visibility and therefore the potential to get bookings. All right. We didn't have a nice set of photography that we could show off and be like, look at all these nice amenities that we have. And it's very well lit and that's very well concentrated on the exact thing I want to show you. And this thing, and this thing, and this thing, and this thing, and this thing. And let's take a wide shot and like the compilation of really great photos that showcase what the guests are going to use. We didn't have that. These were close to cell phone quality photos. No professional stager came to do those things before the existing photos that we had in hand were taken. So same story for all of these properties. And I said, hey, revenue manager, show me what's normal for us. Because normally, at a minimum, we take brand new photography of a property that we take on because we believe it's very important. And while we never were really inclined to prove that's important by intentionally not taking great photography of a property and see how miserable it does, it happened, right? It happened to us. We got to see that example. And now when we compare it to what we normally see with properties we take on, here's 3 properties that we took on a little bit earlier, but largely around the same time. This is a property that we was a completely empty house, not a lick of furniture in it. And we went in there and completely set it up and hired a professional stager to come in after all the furnishing and design and all the amenities. After everything was installed, we had a professional stager come in and prepare the property for the professional photographer that came in. And the photographer that we used is probably the most expensive photographer in the area because he was one of a few to being the only person there that really understand how to photograph a short-term rental property so that it is very appealing to people that are searching for short-term stays in the area. And what we got here is it's almost always the top listing. There was a little drop right here, some turbulent times. All these red marks represent we made changes to the listing at these intervals to try to get the listing back up. Something happened here. I'm not sure exactly what happened to this property. I do think there were some maintenance issues and some negative reviews that came in, and that's the type of thing that can definitely drive property rankings down, but we recovered from it, and we've just been largely at, on the first page and the first listing in a lot of cases with this property. Same story with this property too. This is normal for us when we have complete control of setting up the property, positioning it, by our opinion, optimal to perform well on short-term rental listing websites. Again, that initial month, that initial few days, you automatically get a boost from Airbnb. They can tell pretty quickly if you did not really list a quality property. One thing that Airbnb can measure is the size of your file of the pictures themselves. Really large files get the algorithm's attention, and algorithm boosts them to the top of the list. And so if you have that to begin with, it helps you stay at the top of the list, which is where you pretty much always start. Also, better pictures ultimately mean that they affect consumer behavior. They're going to stay on the listing longer. It's going to stop them from scrolling. Like, whoa, that caught my attention. Let me click on that. Now let me look at all these pictures because there's so many of them and they're so well thought out and so great, right? This may sound kind of foo-foo, but it's true. I've just seen it enough times to know that this is important. Professional staging and professional photography is the last thing that you do before you say that the job is done in getting this property guest ready, right? And the first thing that everyone sees when you launch your property is those pictures. I cannot overstate enough how important they are.